Hi, this is Ms. Richmond. Today we're going to talk about multiplying polynomials. And the key idea here to remember is that we are using the distributive property of multiplication over addition. So let's start out with a fairly easy example. Multiplying a monomial, 3x squared, by a polynomial. And you can see this polynomial has 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. And to do this, we will use the distributive property. And so 3x squared is going to multiply each of these 4 terms of our polynomial. So we will have 3x squared times 4x cubed plus 3x squared times 5xy plus 3x squared times negative 2y plus 3x squared times 8. And when we multiply those out, we would have 12x to the 5th. Remember, we multiply the coefficients, keep the base variable, and add the exponents. So we get 12x to the 5th plus, here again, multiply the coefficients. 3 times 5 is 15. X squared times x is x to the 3rd. Remember, there's a 1 here, even though it's not written. And then we still have the y. The next term would be plus 3 times negative 2 gives us negative 6. X squared, there's no x in the second factor, and then the y. And finally, we have plus 3 times 8 is 24, and we still have the x squared. So this would be our final answer to multiplying the monomial by the polynomial, just distribution. Let's go on to something slightly harder. This time we're multiplying a polynomial by a polynomial. And there's different ways to do it. The first way we'll look at is horizontal method. And the example we'll use is 5x minus 7 times 4x squared plus 2x minus 8. Now remember, I can write this minus 8 as plus a negative 8. And similarly, if I wanted to, I could make that plus a negative 7. So the idea here is I'm going to distribute this 5x minus 7 over each of these 3 terms. When I do that, here's what I get. 5x minus 7 times 4x squared plus 5x minus 7 times 2x plus 5x minus 7 times my negative 8. Remember, I changed that minus to plus a negative 8. So 5x minus 7 times negative 8. Now what do I have to do? I have to take this and multiply using distribution again. So 4x squared has to multiply both 5x and my negative 7. Remember, this is like plus a negative 7. So that would give me 20. 4 times 5 is 20. X squared times x is x cubed. Then 4x squared times my negative 7 is a negative 28 x squared. Same thing over here. The 2x has to multiply each of these terms. So 2x times 5x is a positive 10 x squared. 2x times negative 7, remember I could write this as plus a negative 7, gives me a negative 14x. And the last group, negative 8 times 5x is negative 40x, and negative 8 times negative 7 is a positive 56. Now I have to go through and see if there are any like terms I can combine in order to simplify this. So 20x cubed, that's the only x cubed, so I'll just rewrite that. And then negative 28x squared plus 10x squared gives me a negative 18x squared. Negative 14x minus 40x is a negative 54x. And then lastly, I have plus 56. So that would be my answer doing it horizontally. Again, what you do is you take your first factor and distribute it over each of the terms in the second polynomial. Let's give you a chance to try one on your own. Try this one. Okay, here's our second method. It's vertically, and that's very similar to multiplying numbers. For example, if you had something like 38 times 15, okay, you would stack them vertically, right? And then you'd multiply. 5 times 8 is 40, carry the 4, 5 times 3 is 15, and 4 is 19. And then when I go to multiply by the 1, don't forget the magic 0, right? And then 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. And then, of course, I add these up and get my final answer. Okay, so we use the same basic setup here. We take the longer polynomial and put that on top. So 4x squared plus 2x minus 8. And then 5x minus 7 I write underneath. And then in a very similar way, I'm going to multiply first by the negative 7 and then by the 5x. So negative 7 times negative 8. Remember again, if I wanted to, I could write these as plus a negative plus a negative. So I would get positive 56. Negative 7 times 2x would be a negative 14x. Negative 7 times 4x squared would be a negative 28x squared. Now 5x times negative 8 would be negative 40x, but instead of putting it here, I'll put it underneath the like term. So negative 40x, I'll put underneath the 14x. 5x times 2x is positive 10x squared. Again, I'll write it underneath its like term. 5x times 4x squared is 20x cubed. Draw my line and I can add these up. And because I've put my like terms on top of each other, it's pretty easy to add them up. And so I get the exact same answer as I had in the first problem. So let's give you a chance to try the same problem you did before, but this time using the vertical method. Okay, hopefully you got the same answer. And now we'll go for the last method, which is a matrix method. The idea here, sometimes this is called the window method. The idea is to take the longer polynomial and write it across the top, spread out. So 4x squared, positive 2x, and negative 8. Take your shorter polynomial and write it down the side. We're making a window or a matrix. So 5x and negative 7. Notice I do bring the sign with me. And now I make a little matrix or window box like this. And I'm just going to fill in the squares with the multiplication. So 5x times 4x squared. 5 times 4 is 20. X times x squared is x to the third. 5x times 2x. 5 times 2 is 10. x times x, x squared. 5x times negative 8 is negative 40x. Negative 7 times 4x squared is a negative 28x squared. Notice I don't worry about them lining up yet. Negative 7 times 2x is negative 14x. And negative 7 times negative 8 is a positive 56. So now I have all the terms, I need to add the like terms. So 20x cubed, again, there is no other x cubed, so I just write that down, 20x cubed. And then negative 28x squared and 10x squared, those are like terms. And so when I add those, I get negative 18x squared. Negative 14x and negative 40x are like terms. When I add those, I get a negative 54x. And of course, I'm left with my plus 56. So here we go, and this is the exact same answer we got before when we did the problem using the horizontal method or the vertical method. Let's have you try your problem again, but this time using the matrix method. Here it is. Okay, so today we've learned about 3 different methods that you can use to multiply polynomials. You can multiply them horizontally. You can multiply them vertically. Or you can multiply them using the matrix or window method. And you are free to use whichever one you like. Doesn't really matter. In general, I use the horizontal method or the vertical method, but again, it's totally up to you. Thanks for listening.